Hello and welcome to the class. My name is Penny Sansevieri and I am the author of 18 books, including most recently from book to bestseller. This slide is just a little bit about me. I also run a company called Author Marketing Experts, which we do book promotion and publicity for authors. And we have been doing that since, well, for 21 years. So I love the industry. And I love in particular this class. And there's a slide coming up and I will also make sure that y'all have access to the link. I'll send it to the Alliance so that they can make sure that it's posted somewhere. To get a copy of the slides, you can click this link and there'll also be some other goodies in there. So don't worry about jotting it down. It'll be somewhere in the packet that's sent to you. I love this course, and I will be honest with you, Ellie asked me to put this class together specifically for this conference. So it's somewhat new material for me anyway. I've not presented this before, but I love it because what you think might be a great way to get reader connection, I hope to sort of turn that on its head during this course. And one of the slides that I've used this slide actually before, if you've taken a course from me, this is usually, so when we launch a book, this is what we expect to happen, right? And this is actually sometimes what launch day feels like. Not for everybody, but some of us can probably really relate to this sad little kitty with her black balloon. I'm on a lot of social media portals, and we'll talk about social media in just a minute, but I'm on a lot of different social media portals. And one of the things that I note is that I get messages through the Messenger app, which I rarely see. So you're better off emailing me. But I get notices from other authors saying, oh, I just launched my book on such and such, and I hope you buy it. And that's actually where you're going hunting for readers. And it feels like that is the thing that's going to help you get more readers, but it's actually not. What this course is, and what I hope that you learn today, is that authors don't find readers, readers find you. And putting yourself where readers are is actually the entire goal. So, I mean, thinking about where readers find your genre, and I will tell you that one of the number one reasons that authors are not selling books, or what they perceive to be not enough books, is because they're either sitting in the wrong genre or they're promoting to the wrong genre. So, and that's something that we're going to address a little bit in this class today too, although I know that there are some other courses, some really great classes actually on genre and things like that, but that's actually that's a real issue. So knowing where your readers go for your genre is one of the most important things. 95% of book sales come from personal recommendations. This is not a new statistic. This statistic has been out for a while. It was initially presented at Digital Book World, which was several years. I always say several years ago. And I think maybe it was 4 or 5 years ago now. But truthfully, think about the last show you watched, podcast you listened to, or book that you read. It was probably from somebody that you know or that you trust recommended it to you, or maybe it was a review you read on Amazon that you felt really resonated with whatever it is that you wanted to get out of that book, right? 95% of book sales come from personal recommendations. That doesn't always have to be people that you are connected with, but somebody outside of the author, pitching you on Instagram or Facebook Messenger saying, hey, buy my book, recommending a book, right? So the 7 ways that we're going to talk about today are creating superfans, your newsletter, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what superfans is, your blog, okay, social media that drives engagement, which I know is easier said than done, going to where your readers are, surprisingly, your Amazon book page, which is actually what we're going to start with, and the mindset of focusing on the connection, not the sale. Now, I will say that one of the other, so the secondary piece of what authors where authors make mistakes is not always, so, maybe they have their genre correct and all of their ducks in a row, so to speak, but they are focused very heavily on the sale, right? And when you think about it, right, you hear the term networking, for example. Oh, you need to get out your network, and you sell books, you network. The best time as an author to network is when you have nothing to sell. And I know that sounds a little counterintuitive to what we're teaching today, but the reason for that is because of the mindset. So you really want to reach out to people in a way that is fostering connection and not so focused on the sale. Because like I mentioned at the beginning of this class, the whole piece of, finding me on Messenger and then, pitching me on Messenger, it feels just a little bit too salesy. And honestly, we are very tired of being sold. So that's definitely something to consider. But the other piece of it, and the reason that we're starting with the Your Amazon book page, is because reader connection has a lot to do with the details. So the more that you can pay attention to the details, the better your reader connection can be, right? So the idea being paying attention to absolutely everything that you're doing. The first of that is obviously your Amazon book page. So if you've ever bought or sold a house, or you know somebody who's in real estate, you know that this house is probably easier to sell than this one. Unfortunately, in a very sort of similar way, book pages often end up looking like this. And there are 7 million books, approximately 7 million books on Amazon, which is probably not an accurate number because Amazon is very cone of silence about how many books are actually on their site. So we say 7 million, it could be 8 million, it could be 9 million, lots and lots and lots of books on Amazon. Amazon is noisy and distracting. So if you look at my most recent book, so From Book to Bestseller, it was, so this so far, right? So far, so good, right? It looks really good. It looks like they're, it looks like a regular book page. It doesn't look like there is that there is a lot going on, or rather a lot sort of to distract you, right? So you see a lot of white space, but as you start to scroll down the page, it starts to get a little bit trickier to keep their attention. And if you've ever scrolled down, you scroll down, if you get further down this page, you start to see other books that Amazon is promoting, the also bought list, maybe a video that Amazon is producing. And that's really where you want to make sure that you are keeping readers focused on the page. And though we're not talking about it today, that's actually really why I love A+ content, because A+ content adds imagery to your page, and it helps to keep readers on your page longer, right? So the first piece of this is, I know this is going to sound like a really duh moment, but your book page isn't about you, it's about your reader, okay? I realize this is an extremely obvious statement, but you want to keep things not related to your book that don't belong on your Amazon book page, things not related to your book. And let me explain this. So sometimes I will see, and I can't remember if I saved the example in here because we're talking about so many things, I didn't want to get too terribly slide heavy because I'd go over the allotted time. But sometimes I will see, so let me give you an example. So there was an author, she wrote a book on Kindle Vella, and the book looked terrific. It looked great. Halfway down the book description, she had in there, I support abused women's shelters, which is a great cause. Doesn't belong in your book description because it's distracting. So that's the kind of thing that I mean, right? The same is very true for your author bio, right? Think about what's in your bio. So if your book is funny, your author bio can be funny, right? I talked to an author yesterday. He's so darling. I really hope we get to work with him. He has a book on humor. And what he did is he sort of talked about comedians. So comedians throughout history, right? And he has a picture of him standing next to a sign wearing a Charlie Chaplin hat and a cane. And that's his bio picture. And it's darling. And that really fits. So that fits with his book. So if you've written something that's, I'm not necessarily saying that if you've written something that's, about underwater or whatever, you don't have to have your author picture in scuba gear. I'm not saying that at all. But your author bio should reflect things that are, the elements of your book, because it all matters, right? I love author interviews. So author interviews are a great thing that you can add to your Amazon book page. The reason that I like these is because it helps the reader to get to know you even better. And that's where that connection comes in. So it's not just about, you want to make sure that you have a clean Amazon book page. You want to make sure that you don't have anything distracting on your Amazon book page. Those things are all very important. They're important because if you lose the reader's attention, you lose your connection to the reader and you lose a sale, right? But the interview piece of it, now this is something, so just a twofold piece here. This is something that I did for the author, both to build connection with the reader, but also because we do a lot of Amazon optimization, and I wanted this author, I wanted to use more keywords on this author's book page. And so I created this interview, which was absolutely fabulous. So, but you can do 5 things about me you didn't know. We have an author that we worked with who did that, and it's classic. It's just terrific. Using your author bio smartly. So another way to create connections with readers is to make sure that they know how to contact you, right? So look at what Madison did. Join the mailing list for author updates, special prizes, and a free book. That's awesome. Excuse me. And then the short URL. Amazon does not allow you to click through, which is kind of annoying, but I understand why they're not having you do that. But you can use, and by the way, for those of you who are not familiar with Amazon Author Central, get on there, because this is where you make all these updates, right? So this author added, the audiobook comes out, right? So what these authors are doing is they're using everything that is available to them to help to let readers know that they're not just this, one hit wonder kind of a thing. So they have other books out, things like that. This is something that I did on my author page. I actually pulled the table of contents out of How to Sell Books by the Truckload on Amazon, and I added it to the author page. How does this help me? How does it create reader engagement? Well, if they can't see the inside the book, and sometimes inside the book on Amazon's kind of funny, right? So sometimes, if your front matter's a little bit too long, then they don't even get to the table of contents. It's so I decided to put the table of contents on the book page so people could see what they're getting, right? If you have a nonfiction book, obviously this works really well if you choose to. But it also helps to keep readers on the page longer. This is another great way to, and I always admire Selena. I don't know if she's still active on all of those places, but I mean, if you look at all the social media that she's doing, it's really pretty amazing. And it's all free to do. You can do it through Amazon Author Central. Use every tool at your disposal to build your fan base. Okay. So seasonal book page updates. I love doing this. It's always, you can, for the most part, depending on how you're published, obviously, you can get in there and update your book to, let's say, for example, this is a very cozy romance read, perfect for, the winter months, or this hot beach read, whatever that is, right? Mentioning new releases, really, really important. I love updating my book description on Amazon to make sure and include any any new releases that I have coming up too. Amazon Video Shorts, if you've never done this, it's a really great way. In fact, I had it was funny because it was my last class before the world shut down and all the conferences were canceled. And I treasure this class so much because it was wonderful. And one of the authors there asked me, she said, how can I thank readers for getting onto my book page and considering buying my book, or hopefully buying my book? And I said, create a video short. And you can do this for anything. So you can create, matter of fact, if you're on TikTok, you can use some TikTok content or short video content. You can create a short video or have somebody videotape you from, video record you from an author event that you're doing or anything like that, and put it up on video shorts on Amazon. Again, it's a really great way to use the Amazon portal to help build that reader connection, right? So don't just throw your book up there and hope that something happens with it. There are a lot of tools up there for you to be able to use. Now, obviously, building your fan base is a big part of reader connection. And here's an interesting story before I launch into this. And actually, the building your fan base, I divided this up into a couple of different segments just because there's a lot to cover. But there was an author that I read about, and I want to say this was in January, and she had a so she had a book. She had decided to self-publish her book. She had been traditionally published previously. She decided to self-publish her book. And she spent a lot of time building a mailing list, building a connection with her fan base. And when she launched her book, within 48 hours, she had 4,000 ratings and reviews for a self-published book. So it's no joke when I say you really absolutely definitely want to focus on building your fan base. So how you do that is one of the ways that you do that. So you can also do this with social media, but every time that you put a book out there, make sure that your readers have a reason to get in touch with you. So for a fiction book, I encourage authors to put a letter in the back of their book with some kind of an offer, right? So put a letter in there, and I'll show you an example of a letter that we used that I actually wrote for an author that we work with. And the letter is encouraging, and whatever that is. I mean, if you've written nonfiction, maybe it's a special offer, maybe it's sample content, maybe it's a quiz, whatever it is, give them a reason to connect with you. Goodreads did a study and found that the number one thing that readers want to do at the end of a book is to connect with the author. The problem with that is that most books don't have that CTA. They don't have that call to action. And you really are losing out on being able to get that reader connection. Part of the reason for that is because readers won't act on their own. And it's not because they're lazy or they're not interested in your book. It's because it's human nature to need to be told what to do or what next step to take. That's one of the reasons that authors say, let's say you have a bunch of family and friends and you're super popular, like, oh, I'm set, I don't need any help with book reviews, they're all going to review my book. And what happens is that maybe 2% of them do. And it's not because they don't care about you. It's not because they don't want you to be successful. It's because they don't know that, in most cases, they don't know that reviews matter as much as they do, right? And that's part of the reason why when you see a book on Amazon that's got lots and lots and lots of reviews, right? I mean, that book is, you're probably dealing with an author who has obviously done lots of promotion, but probably also, like the author that I mentioned with the 4,000 reviews, has a significantly impressive mailing list, right? So the first thing that you want to do, obviously, letter to your readers. And what I did here is I just said, thank you so much for reading this book. Really would love you ask for feedback. Readers will tell you, they will give you feedback, right? Give them a way to contact you. And then here comes your ask, right? Ask for, if you take a look in the third paragraph, ask for A review. Don't ask for a good review. Don't ask for a 5-star review. Just ask for a review. Now, some other ideas for growing your mailing list. Obviously, social media, newsletter, which hopefully you're going to be, you know, you're going to be encouraging people to sign up for. Book events. Always, always, always take a newsletter, sign up to book events, discounted price promotions. The other thing, and I just realized this is a little bit out of place. We're going to talk about this more in the next section, but getting readers to sign up for your street team. And I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole because we are going to talk about this in a minute, as I mentioned, but many times authors have what they call ARC teams or reader teams. And these are folks who get the book in advance and they read it and they give you feedback and they post a review, hopefully, but they don't always post a review. And one of the things that I've found as I've talked to authors who have ARC teams is that they don't actually post. Like, I think if they have, 100 people or 50 people or whatever on this, like less than 10% of them, maybe less than 5% of them actually post a review. So we want to kind of turn the tables on that. And I'm going to get to that and more in that just a minute, but we'll come back to this link in a second. So email marketing. This is something that, when you talk about email marketing, a lot of times eyes glaze over. It's like, oh, it's another thing that I have to do. But your email list is really important because that is your direct connection to your reader, right? How many times you do it? I get asked this all the time. How many times should I send a newsletter out? What should it say, etc. I would say that set up the newsletter now, figure out what you're going to write about later, right? Keep in mind that readers really like to get to know their favorite authors. So you could even talk about, a vacation that you took now that we're all taking vacations again, right? And talk about maybe something that inspired you for your book or something so it should ideally all kind of come around back to the book or to the core message of the book. So if you have a business, so like when we send our newsletter, obviously our business is all tied and tethered to book marketing and book publicity. We are actually, our newsletter talks about some of the latest goings on. We link to blog posts that we've done, and we do a little bit of an intro again around the topic of, book marketing and publicity. Your newsletter timing honestly really depends on you. I wish I had a hard and fast rule for that, but I don't, unfortunately. So I would say that your newsletter timing should be whatever kind of works for you. And it's a little bit annoying right now. I don't know how many of you know this, but Apple's last update last September made a change to the system whereby it doesn't. So you used to be able to look at your email marketing system and see how many people opened your email based on the time and the day that you sent it, et cetera. Now it's a little bit harder to do because the iOS platform no longer shares that information with these mailing lists. So that's a little bit tricky, but you can still get a sense of newsletter timing by the responses that you get. And let me tell you a couple of really cool things you can do. So to get folks to read to the end, which is obviously always the goal, do a contest. And what I recommend that you do is figure out something. So whatever the promo is, whether it's a free book, it's a $10 gift card, et cetera. And you select a winner in every newsletter that you do, right? That winner has 5 days to respond to whatever they won. If they don't respond, it goes back into the prize pack pile and it goes out the next time to the new winner. And you put the winner's name at the end. So you tease it at the beginning, you put their name at the end. That gets people to read to the end, right? Your email subject line is really important. That is going to be, so, the newsletter from, Sally Smith, here's the author newsletter from Sally Smith, is not very exciting. So think about your newsletter subject line and your from line. This is a little weird, but if you set up an email through an email system, like we use Sendinblue, we were with MailChimp, but MailChimp just got weirdly expensive. They changed their pricing structure. So our from line has my name on it, right? And the reason that I mention that, and you can go into the settings of your newsletter system, the reason that I mention that is because you want to bypass the spam, right? You want to get your newsletter stuck in spam. And Gmail is kind of notorious for that. So if the from line is a little nebulous, so if your book is tethered to your business or something, and it says, I don't know, Star Wars Enterprises or something, that could get pushed into spam or into another, like they have different Google, Gmail, excuse me, has some different, categories. There's promotions and different things like that. So your newsletter may not get seen. One other thing that I want to mention to you, really, really important, regardless of how people are reading, regardless of what platform that they're reading your email on, always, always, always respond when people write you. So one of the things that does is it tells the mail service provider that you are not spam. So also incentivizing readers to contact you and give you, so sometimes we'll do that. We would love ideas for XYZ or whatever. And we try to get readers to respond to us and then write them back, so that first off, to thank them for their feedback, but also to make sure that their email knows that we are a trusted provider. So that's just a little email trick to help get your, improve your communication with your readers. So one of the things, so reader magnet, ethical bribe, those are all used sort of interchangeably. What a reader magnet is, if you're not familiar, is it's something that you anchor to your newsletter to encourage signups. So when somebody lands on our website, for example, they get access to our free book marketing planner, which people really love. And you'll get a copy of it with these slides too. It's a really fun way to plan out, your book marketing, things like that. That's our reader magnet. That's our ethical bribe, right? So, but you may not have, that may not be your thing, right? You may say, well, I write fiction, what can I do? You could do the monthly contest like we talked about. So you could use the contest as your ethical bribe, and then also obviously highlight it in your newsletter, quizzes, white papers, free book chapters, all of that. I'm sure that if this conference doesn't have a class on reader magnets, because there are whole classes on that, you can definitely find one online if you want to dig more into that. So the power of personal connection, as I mentioned about that Goodreads study, Goodreads found that, readers really do want to connect with authors, and you want to be sort of careful with that. I mean, you want to give them access to you without, obviously privacy issues and things like that. But it's really is, it's an important thing. And I love talking about super fans and street teams. And let me explain to you what I mean by that. This is where that link from previously kind of comes in. Because one of the things that you really want to do, yes, you want to build your newsletter. All those things are great, but you really want to build a team of readers who are going to review everything that you do, right? And that is part of the reason that author that I mentioned with 4,000 reader, it was both 4,000 reviews and ratings. I really don't like that Amazon did the ratings thing. I think it's a little weird. I'd like to have all reviews, but anyway, it's a conversation for another time. This is really when you start to build your tribes, you will be able to do more with less, right? So look, we're a marketing and publicity firm. We stay in business by helping authors promote their books. I am certainly not suggesting that you don't get out there and do marketing and hire companies or outsource or whatever. But so many times readers overlook, or authors overlook their readers, not necessarily because they don't care about their readers, but because they're not really sure where to start. So let's say, for example, that you already have a newsletter and you have 500 people on it, right? And you've kind of sort of informally used it as an ARC team. You send out a note to your newsletter like, hey, I'll give you a free copy of my book in exchange for a review. And that goes back to the low percentage of review returns. Again, not because, sometimes they just don't have the time or whatever, happens. Those people on your newsletter list are considered your super fans, right? So they're a fan of your work. They love your work. They buy all your books. They're often commenting on social media. They comment on your blog. They respond often to newsletter announcements. So if you have a newsletter and the folks are pretty active, I would say that your entire newsletter is probably comprised of your super fans. Now, your super fans don't get anything free. They get access to you. They get, maybe you would decide that you're going to let them know early when a release is up for pre-order, but they do not get a free book. Okay. That's reserved for your street team. Your street team is your next level super fans. So those are the people that are actually going. So those are those 4,000 that I mentioned earlier. I'm not suggesting that you need 4,000, and I want to talk about numbers in just a second. But they are very active. They have the time. They're very, very active. They're willing to share, and they're willing to help you promote. And this is the multiplier factor, right? So I know I threw out that 4,000 number a lot during this class, but the idea really isn't to have 4,000 people. The idea is to start with 5 or 10 or 15, because the multiplier of that is times 5, and sometimes some cases times 10, depending on depending on what you're having them do. So what you're having them do, as well as who they are connected with. And I shared this slide with you all earlier and it's linked to basically a sign-up form. And it's a really good idea to determine before you jump into this, what do you want them to do for you, right? And this link actually goes to, it is a page on the website, but it's actually just a Google form. And the Google form identifies different things that the author wanted her street team to do. And what I had suggested to her when we started all of this was, I said, look, you have a newsletter list. Target your newsletter list. Say, listen, I want to start we want to start an exclusive street team. Everybody's welcome to sign up for it. You may not all want it. She phrased in such a way that said, the newsletter is still going to get you news and updates and things like that. The street team does require some work. So she told folks that in advance, and it was also on this link. And the reason that I suggest that is because if you mention, people love free books, right? I mean, we used to go to Book Expo America, but anytime that you go to any kind of a trade show where they're giving you free books, I mean, people just love, I remember that, people would walk out of Book Expo America with just bags and bags and bags of free books. And many of them, were librarians and reviewers and things like that. But, a free book is really hard to resist. So it's important to be clear what you want your street team to do. So are you going to have them review and rate on Goodreads, add it to their Goodreads bookshelf, review on Amazon? Do they need to be connected to social? So think about that in advance. And if it's easier, you may want to just start out with reviews, because we all want to get more reviews. So you may want to just start out with reviewing on Amazon and maybe reviewing on Goodreads. So that's the only 2 things that are going to be on your questionnaire. And what that should say is do you have you reviewed on Amazon before, right? And can you review on Amazon? And this is an important distinction, because sometimes Amazon gets a little funny about posting reviews if you're not a Prime member, right? Which is a little weird. So can you review on Amazon? Have you reviewed previously? Really, really important to ask. Goodreads, do they need to have an account on Goodreads, right? So they should be semi-active on Goodreads. I mean, they don't have to be master level Goodreads at all, unless that's what you want, in which case you should make sure that that's in your question, in the questionnaire that you fill out. And you're going to get a lot of, so this author gets a lot of requests all the time in this Google form. And some folks that review, some folks just want the opportunity to be part of the street team, but they don't necessarily, like, maybe they're not on social media, they've never reviewed on Amazon, so they really don't fit that. But I recommend that you write back to everybody and just let them know, thank you so much, we've included you, or we haven't, but I'm going to put you in our super fan group, which is your newsletter. And that's part of the reason why I like to separate these out. I like to use this terminology. I'd like to divide the terminology, is a better way to say it, because I feel that you never want to be dismissive of your readers, not that you would be, but I'm just saying that if they don't get included, you're still part of this group, and here are the benefits that you get. And it is going to be, some people will make it, some people won't, but they're still part of a super fan group. They still get some really cool stuff, but they don't get a free book, right? And they don't get some of the other things that you're going to give them, which we're going to talk about right now. So you're going to want to reward your street team members, right? You're going to want to reward them for their work. And it's kind of like being part of the inner circle of anything. You get lots of goodies, you get, different kinds of things, but it doesn't necessarily have to cost you money. So we have a lot of stuff as authors that we can repurpose. For example, the cutting room floor stuff. So if you have had a battle with your editor and he or she pulled a few chapters or a chapter or whatever, and it didn't make it, or a scene didn't make it, or whatever, those are really fun things to include with your street team, because they love all the things. They love all of the stuff that you're going to give them. Invite them to name a character, right? Run a contest with your street team to name a character. And maybe you give them a prize, and maybe that prize is, a $5, $10 gift card to Starbucks or something like that. Pick a song. We're going to talk a little bit more about the Spotify playlist in the next slide. Alternative ending. So invite readers who have read through your books. And I realize that a lot of this has to do with fiction, but invite your readers to suggest an alternative ending, right? So, and character specific. So we did a Pinterest board with an author and invited her street team. It was a private Pinterest board, and we invited her street team to post pictures of, or clothes, brands, purses, perfume, men's cologne, cars, etc., of what they drive, and what they wear, and where they go, where they might go on vacation, and all kinds of fun stuff like that. For those of you like myself, if you've written nonfiction, my street team folks get a few things. So we do a private Facebook group. We have a bonus Ask Penny Anything, where we do a Zoom call and they can just throw their marketing questions at me. Plus they get access to our Master Amazon video course. And those are the things that are, so if you have written nonfiction and you're thinking, what am I going to do? Think about what your brand is, what your platform is. And we're going to talk about those in just a second, and what might work, what your end user really wants, right? What they want, what is going to really benefit them. So playlist on Spotify, this was kind of fun. We actually had an author create a playlist, and then her street team could add songs to it, and they did, and it was really, really fun. Name a pet, pick a recipe, exclusive contests, which is your favorite place to read. And we did this actually with an author, and I'll show you a slide in just a minute, and you could do this for fiction or nonfiction, and ask your audience for an answer. This again works fiction or nonfiction. So if you need to know something, if you have a question about something, invite your street team to participate, and you could do that through a closed Facebook group or through their exclusive newsletter. So that's one of the other things that I wanted to mention too, is how you're going to communicate with them is going to either be through your newsletter or through a private Facebook group. I kind of like doing the newsletter. I think it's a more direct connection. Sometimes, not everybody sees Facebook updates depending on how many groups that they belong to. You could definitely do both, actually. So that in Facebook groups, when you invite your street team to participate, they get to see each other and they kind of know, people post different things, and you'd be amazed at how much a private group, if you have some chatty people who are, love to post things about whatever they're challenged with, or, the one of the scenes in a book that they really love that you wrote, or something, or how your book helped them, how these private Facebook groups can to some degree carry themselves. So this was a Pinterest board that this author set up, and she invited her street team to post pictures of their favorite places to read. And one of them got a $25 Amazon gift card. And you may think, so I've already thrown out gift cards a couple times, and you may think, well, I'm just throwing money out left and right. But your street team, again, can really help you promote your book. So we had an author who has a street team, and she would, with every new release or even mid-release, she would send them a box of goodies. So character trading cards, bookmarks, things like that, that they would then pass out to their book group, or, put the bookmarks in their local dry cleaners, or some people love bookmarks, believe it or not. As many ebooks as we read, print books are still popular. People love bookmarks. So it is a little bit of a give and take, but you definitely get street teams that are active and well managed do extremely well. And that's the other part of this too, is the street team management. So you're going to come up with lots of ideas. Not all of them are going to fly. Not all my ideas fly. Just, some ideas are going to go over well. Some ideas are not. Just keep on moving, right? Don't let it discourage you. And by that, I mean, maybe you come up with a contest that they didn't really like, or they didn't really like, but maybe didn't really participate in, right? Just keep trying to figure out what they like. And let me tell you a little something about contests. Make it really easy. So the idea of the Pinterest board, pin the picture of where you like to read to the board. That was something that was just super easy. Take a picture of where you like to read, pin it to the board, the best one will pick. It was very, very, very simple. Keep it really easy. I recommend that you track birthdays, send them just a little something, Starbucks card, Amazon gift card. Let them know up front that birthday goodies are included. And this is going to seriously date me, but before the internet, there were a number of groups that you could join. And I'm thinking, like, for example, fan clubs, right? So some of you, maybe not all of you, but some of you may remember the fan clubs of yore, where you would join the fan club. The first thing you would get is a signed autographed picture from the superstar, right? And then maybe you'd get a t-shirt, and then you'd get a little something for your birthday, right? And maybe it was just, who knows what it was. Maybe it was a t-shirt or whatever it was. And you paid to join the fan club generally, right? In this case, they're not paying to join this fan club, but the idea is really still the same. You're getting goodies because you are asking for their time. That's essentially their payment, right? So be upfront with all the goodies that you get, because they love this stuff, right? The rewards, you are requesting a lot of their time. And I would say that think about the rewards. So depending on what you have them do. So let's say, for example, that you just want them to review on Amazon. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with starting small and then layering on as you get the hang of this, right? The amount of rewards that you give should be somewhat commensurate with the amount of effort that you're asking them to do. So if you're asking them to post to social, if you're asking them to review on Goodreads, if you're asking for them to share it in their newsletter and review on Amazon, those start to get more complicated, and you also have to track them. You want to make sure that they do them. So the rewards should be a little bit more elevated, right? But make sure that you're very clear in your rewards. And you can always communicate with your street team and say, listen, we're upping the reward game. but I'm asking for this as an additional piece of it, right? So start to think ahead a little bit, just in terms of maybe you want to start with just an Amazon review, and then later you want to add Goodreads, and maybe you want to add social media. So as part of your onboarding process with your street team, you'll want to make sure that they're connected. You want to make sure that they're connected to the things that are going to be important to this process. So Facebook, Goodreads, etc. So let's talk a little bit about your author platform. And I'm going to a little bit mash branding in this conversation too, because really the two are somewhat interchangeable. And the biggest issue I think that authors face with the conversation of author platform and branding, is that it's a tiny bit nebulous and it's a little confusing. Well, it's a lot confusing. So your platform is really, your platform is potentially your website. Let me get that slide up here. So it can potentially be your website, should be, your website. Every author should have a website. Newsletter, got to have a newsletter. Speaking events, if you do them, if you're nonfiction, right? If you're fiction, maybe you do author events, media mentions, previous books, and your blog, if you have one. Okay. But your platform is really, so my platform is my business, my blog, my speaking, my media mentions. Your tools for your platform are going to be different for just about everybody, right? But these are the things that, and you may be thinking, well, what does this have to do with reader connection? It all matters, right? Because your readers connect with you in different ways, and your platform and your branding are important to pull readers in. Whether you want it or not, your branding is happening right now. And your brand is your promise to the reader. And everything that you do is part of your brand. And everything that you put out there, whether you realize it or not, is speaking to your reader. And I want to ask you, do you like what it's saying? Because the reader connection is more than just, as you've seen from this presentation, which I realize is pretty packed. Hopefully you found it very helpful, but it's pretty packed with different avenues, because readers don't just respond to great reviews on Amazon or a cool post on social media or whatever. It's all encompassing, and your brand fits into that. It matters because it is your promise to the reader, as I mentioned, but it's also your unique story, and it's also your look, right? And how you're showing up online. I used to always say, before the industry was throwing out the terms author brand and author platform, I used to call it your resume. And everything is your resume, everything that you put out there. So think about what you're posting on social. Think about how you're showing up in online groups and things like that. And also, obviously, think about, this is an author, Jenny Hale, this is an author that we worked with. Think about your books, right? Because when a reader finds an author that they love, they're very likely going to buy all of their books. And that's one of the best, obviously, reader connections that you can have, if they're avid readers and they're buying all of your books. But if your books look, and I don't have examples because I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but if your books don't look like they're all part of your brand, and I'm not talking about that your books all have to have similar, because in this case, she has a lot of blue covers here, I realize. But you get a sense by looking at Jenny Hale's books that they're all connected in some way. They're not part of a series at all. She does not have a series, but they all fall under her brand umbrella. So it's both what you put out there in social media, it's your promise to your reader, but it's also everything. And one thing that I've recommended to authors sometimes, if they say, I'm just really having a hard time moving the needle on my books, and in some cases, cover makeovers are a very simple and easy way to create a cohesive brand, to create something that readers really resonate with. Because sometimes what happens is that you get somebody, so a reader sees a book that they really love, and then they go over to your website, and maybe your website's a disaster, or it doesn't really look right. The colors, it doesn't match. And then there's a reader disconnect, and you've lost that connection. And that's in a very basic, but also very important way. That's how you break or you win your reader connection. So just really quickly, elements on every website, author websites are important. They don't necessarily have to cost you a lot of money. So I'm not encouraging you to go out and throw $10,000 at the problem, right? There are a lot of places that you can actually build your own website. Be careful with that. Make sure that you know what, the kind of look that you want, et cetera, or the kind of feel. Navigation, a lot of authors, especially if they're designing their own websites, they have lots and lots of navigation. I try to discourage that. 4 or 5 buttons, really no more. 4 is preferable. You can have as little as 3 pages on your website, even, less. Some authors have just a 1 page where you click something and it bumps you to a different part of that page, which is also fine. Contact points, I know sounds kind of silly to mention it, but ironically, when I do website evaluations, the number one thing that authors forget to include are contact points. It's crazy, right? Put up a blog only if you plan on keeping it active. Don't highlight what you aren't proud of. Sounds a little duh, I'm sure, but it's amazing to me how many times I find authors that put up social media icons for social media sites that maybe they touched a year ago and aren't returning to. So don't highlight what you're not proud of. What I mean is, don't highlight something like if you've started on TikTok and you decided it was too much work or whatever, don't highlight it, right? Don't highlight a blog if you're not updating your blog regularly. So let's close out this session. And I say that because I know I've thrown a lot at you. But with social media, it's really it's not about being everywhere. It's about being everywhere that matters. And I think it's really important to determine, yes, you should be on social media, but you don't have to be on all social media portals. Social media doesn't necessarily sell books, but it helps with your exposure. So the more exposure that you have, obviously, the more times you'll get in front of your reader and the more books you'll sell, et cetera. Social media helps to leverage that. I would rather you be on one social media site that you can do really well rather than 5 that you're doing just so. Yes, you can just run Facebook ads, but again, it's not really, I'm not as much of a fan of Facebook ads as I mentioned earlier on in this class, only if they're getting to, if they're pointing to something that is a limited time deal or something like that. Take a look at where your primary audience is. If your primary audience is on Twitter, that's your main focus. If your primary audience is on Instagram, then that's a great portal for you. For every other, if you have started up a whole bunch of social media and you don't really know, you're like, oh, I want to pare this down to one place, pin a post to the top of those social media sites and let them know to follow you on XYZ, right? Wherever that is. And I have a lot of authors that ask me about TikTok. Much like any social media site, TikTok takes work. It takes absolute work. So if you're going to commit to something, or if you're going to dip your toe in social media, like, oh, I haven't really done anything in social media, it's a great way to foster that reader connection. But you also have to be consistent. So, getting on and monitoring a post for comments and liking comments or responding to comments, you want to be actively engaged in that platform. So I hope that you have enjoyed this class. I want to leave you again with this slide, just a quick plug for my own books, from book to bestseller, How to Sell Books by the Truckload. Both of those are brand new releases. which I hope you will consider. And to download these slides and the marketing planner, you can just go to this link, and I'll make sure that Ellie has this link as well. I wish you all great success. I hope that you've enjoyed this class. You can reach me at info@amarketingexpert.com if you would like to give me feedback or want more information about what we do. Thank you so much for tuning in. Bye-bye.